My name is Richard August, and I'll be your host. Our guest is Senate Minority Leader Jessica de la Cruz, who represents District 23, which encompasses North Smithfield, Burrillville, and Gloucester. She was first elected to the state Senate in 2018 and is seeking re-election. Welcome to State of the State.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Leader de la Cruz, tell our audience about yourself. I know your constituents know you and so forth, but we're talking to the whole state here, so tell the state about yourself. You are the Senate Minority Leader.
I am, and I'm so thankful to my colleagues who put their trust in me to elect me to be the leader for the Republicans in the Senate. But for those who don't know me, I am a native Rhode Islander, have lived here all my life. My parents immigrated probably in the late 70s and met at East Providence High School in ESL class. And they moved to East Providence. So if you know anything about East Providence, you know that they're Portuguese. And then I met my husband, oh gosh, I don't know how many years ago, but we've known each other for a very long time. We've been married for 23 years, and we have 3 boys. And I tell people it's my favorite job. I love being a mom, and everything else is secondary. Yeah,
well, I'm sure with 3 boys and being a concerned mom, an involved mom, when a legislator is in session, you've got to be a busy lady.
I am, and if not for the help really of my mother-in-law, my mom, and also my husband. My husband's very hands-on, he's a great dad, and when I was thinking about running for office, I was like, what do you think? Do you think I should do it? And I just remember him saying to me, I will support you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. He's like, I'm not going to say yes or no, but if you think you should run, I will support you 110%. And he sure has.
Right.
I've never had to worry about the kids. Somebody's always there for them.
Excellent. And I understand your husband recently announced the candidacy for a local office. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so he decided to run for school committee. He, like myself, was very reluctant to dip his toe into politics and running for office. But the school committee was going to have some vacancies, and a couple of the school committee members approached him and said, you're a former educator, and you've been on the budget committee, so you understand finance, but you also understand education. We think you should run for office. And so
talked them into it.
They talked him into it, and then he came to me and said, Jess, what do you think? So I gave him the same answer. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will support you.
So that's the school committee in North Smithfield. That's right. Okay.
Yes.
Because your area covers Burrillville and Gloucester as well.
Yeah.
One of those combined districts. So as a member of the minority party, you certainly have to reach across the aisle to work with Democrats. And last session, you co-sponsored a bill with, on the House side, Democrat Julie Casimiro, and you managed, both of you working, you on the Senate side, she on the House, and you got a bill in front of the governor, and he signed it into law that you guys, both of you, are very pleased with. Tell us about that piece of legislation.
You know, it was, at least on the Senate side, we had a package of 25 bills that the Senate was looking to pass. I believe only 13 of them passed. Mine was one of them, and I was really the only Republican to have a piece of legislation included in that list of 25. And you know, we look at it, and some may say it's a small bill, it's modest, and I would tend to agree, but I do think that it's so important because we're talking about hospital price transparency. I don't know if you've ever had a hospital bill come to your doorstep. I have.
Well, so have I.
And you know, I look at the costs for things, and I think, really, for an aspirin, for this, for that, and I was just, and that was so many years ago, and just listening to testimony, just, you know, I thought of my own experience and thought, you know, we need to have some legislation so that hospitals list their prices, because one hospital may charge $5,000 for a procedure, while another may charge $15,000. And so it is in the best interest of the taxpayer, because these hospitals are receiving government funds, and so they're not private entities per se, they're accepting government money. So we want the prices listed so that patients can shop around, and that way they're better informed. And then one statistic came out that said, if the hospital prices have ballooned so much that if we were to equate that to a gallon of milk, it would cost us $50 a gallon.
Sure.
That's how fast.
Yeah, now, some of it is due to the advances in technology, of course, as we
Sure.
can appreciate, because, I mean, some of the equipment and so forth they're buying today that do miracle things,
Sure.
robotic surgery and everything else are certainly part of it. But, you know, you're right. It concerns everybody, and while people will say we have the highest hospital care costs in the world, people still come here. I was talking to a gentleman who's from Canada, and his mother lives on the border, and she told him that if anything happened to her of an emergency nature, bring her across the border to the United States.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, were there any bills that you sponsored or co-sponsored last session that did not pass that you wish had passed?
All of them except one.
Okay. Okay. Well,
All of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So, give us kind of an idea of.
Oh gosh, they range from so many things. Education is one of them, super important to me as a mom of 3. I know that kids are not cookie cutter. My own, I have 3, they're very different. They learn differently. And so I think that it's important to give students school choice, especially if they're in a failing school district. I sit on, as ex officio in my capacity as minority leader. I have the committees that I'm assigned to, but I'm also a member of all the committees. Yep. So I'm able to jump in, and one of them that I jumped in at one point was education. I was just sifting through the numbers while people were testifying. And some school districts, their proficiency in English language arts was so low. I think it was in 8th grade in one of the inner cities was at 3% proficiency. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 3% proficiency. We are failing our children. And I'm not saying that we should abandon public education, because I went to public school, I graduated from public school, and I feel like I received a good education. But in the instances in which children are failing, let's give them an option while we fix public schools so that we can say we have the best in the nation. But right now, I think relegating students to a school simply because it's in their zip code and it's failing is unjust.
Do you think, where do you come down on the argument that students who go to private schools, whether they're related with a church or whatever, if they go to a private school, that the money should follow them? And is that part of the school choice equation as far as you're concerned? A parent should be able to move and that school gets the money that would have been put into the public school system?
For sure, but not just a religious school, but a charter school or even another public school. Because there are other public schools in Rhode Island that are exceptional.
Yes.
But we also don't want the school to be, obviously they can't allow, they have to leave a buffer for the students that may come into the district and move in and want to attend, right? But we want to be able to give them school choice, whatever that looks like, for whatever their needs. But I also say that the legislation doesn't take all of the funds to follow the student. It would take about half the funds. So for example, if it costs $10,000 to educate a student in Rhode Island, which is not, it's much more than that, but let's just say it's $10,000. $5,000 would stay in the school district of origin, and the other $5,000 would go with the student. So if they wanted to go to school that cost $8,000, then the family would be responsible for the additional $3,000. But that $5,000 would stay in the school district. So you have one less student, but you have that money that you can use for other things. You could use for English language learners, ESL learners. You could use it for math intervention or whatever it is.
Yep.
So we're not
try to bring up your whole student population.
So we're not taking all the funding away. In fact, we're going to have more funding for fewer students.
In your announcement for re-election in the Valley Breeze newspaper, you're quoted as saying, and I'm going to quote here, "I know firsthand the struggles of working families and will continue to deliver common sense solutions that benefit all our residents." What do you mean by common sense solutions? Can you?
Yeah, common sense solutions are, when I say that I understand what people are going through, it's because, I'm just a regular person. I'm not, wealthy, I'm not affluent, I'm just a middle-class mom who goes to the grocery store, who sees I see the price of groceries double, my heat, my electricity, all of it. And it pinches me. Like, I'm thinking, okay, do I need to make that extra run to the grocery store? Can I, maybe make one stop and so I'm not wasting gasoline because I've got a big truck with 3 kids, 3 rows. Yeah. It's a lot. So when I think common sense solutions, I think, what is legislation that would alleviate some of the the issues that Rhode Islanders are facing. And I think that one of them is lowering the sales tax. Right now we have one in which, you know, if you're on a border, Rhode Island is very small, but say, for example, you live in East Providence. How many East Providence residents cross the border to Massachusetts for gasoline?
Yeah.
And then they stay there because there's a Walmart over there, so they're gonna pick up their shampoo or whatever it is that they need, and then they might hit the Stop and Shop or, you know, the Price Right. And so what we like to do is, if we lower the sales tax, we believe, to 5%, we make us competitive with the region.
Yeah.
And so people would leave Massachusetts and Connecticut to shop here.
Yeah.
And that would help Rhode Islanders, and I think would benefit the state. Obviously, the revenue in the state would increase, and we could be giving our residents tax cuts.
There are, well, I want to talk about some of the bills that you would support in the coming session, and I may be wrong, but I believe you're in favor of convening a state constitutional convention known as a CONCON.
So I was on the fence, but after hearing the testimony, I'm definitely leaning in favor of. I'm not saying I'm going to be the cheerleader for, you know, out in front, but it's not up to us. It's not up to the legislature. It's up to the people. And if the people want to convene a constitutional convention, then that's what we're going to do. And what really changed my mind, if I'm going to be completely honest with you,
please do.
Is
be honest with your voters. Okay. Yeah.
Is, you know, I was on the fence. I was unsure. I was afraid of, you know, constitutional rights. Are we going to be infringing on those? Mm-hmm. But when I saw the groups that were against the Constitutional Convention, I thought to myself, then I should be for the Constitutional Convention. And a lot of the testimony was like, well, this is anti-democratic. And I said, no, this is the definition of democracy, direct democracy, is allowing the people to vote. So this is not anti-democratic. This is the definition of. And so, again, seeing the list of organizations against the CONCON made me lean towards in favor of it.
So, do you have any idea what kind of issues would the CONCON should address? So let's assume for a minute that it's on the ballot first.
Sure.
Do you have any ideas what kind of issues would you think they should address?
Well, they can't address anything at
yeah,
all.
So,
I mean,
are there any priorities that you think should be looked at?
Inspector General.
We're going to get to that.
That would be number one. Like, since we can't pass it through the legislature, and we know that Rhode Islanders want, I think it was like 73%. There was a poll done. I forgot which news agency put that out. Over 70% of Rhode Islanders want it, and yet the legislature stalls. Like, this is something that would benefit us greatly, and I think it would root out waste, fraud, and abuse. As you know, and I say those three all the time, but that's what we're trying to root out. And so, if that came through the Constitutional Convention, I would be thrilled, overjoyed.
Okay. But the process, people have to understand a constitutional convention is not the body that's going to amend the Constitution. So you want to walk through the process?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the individuals that would convene, they have to be elected. And they would be elected by the House districts. Yep. So there would be 75 people running for election to represent
the whole state.
The whole state, exactly. And so when people are going to the polls to vote, they're just voting yes or no, we want one, a constitutional convention. And then from there, we have to set a budget, we have to run an election. And what that election looks like right now, I'm not 100% sure, because we did hear from the Secretary of State, and there are options like, do we have a primary or no primary? Is it just, you know, whoever wins, you know, if it's a three-way, a four-way, whoever has the highest vote getter is victorious. That's probably what the Secretary of State, that's what the Secretary of State's office was saying would save the state some money. And then from there, those elected individuals for this purpose would meet and discuss what's going to be on the ballot for voters to vote on. And that could be, you know, as scary as, for me, curtailing the Second Amendment, or something amazing as Inspector General.
So, and then the next step, of course, is what recommendations they come up with go to the back to the legislature, right? Or do they go? Then they can become a referendum for the people. I forgot. Okay, yes. So that's so what it is. We're not talking about a 6-month process. If people approve it at this referendum and say we want it, it's going to take a while to get the whole process done. That's my point, I guess.
Yeah, and I would say sitting on this commission for the Constitutional Convention, I learned a lot, but I didn't learn everything because apparently there's a book on it, and
you didn't have time to read the book.
I didn't have time to read the book I think one Constitutional Convention took, oh gosh, I'm going to get it wrong, but over a year, because it was just, the process was so long.
Yeah, well, sure, you have 75 people coming from all points of the state, and they've got to work out a process to do the whole thing, yeah. I want to go, we just talked about Inspector General. That was a little further down on my list, but look, we've had 2 former Auditor Generals for the state, both of whom have expressed concerns about an Inspector General office. One of them actually presented a draft of legislation for an Inspector General, which didn't get anywhere. But anyway, many politicians come in here and they say they're in favor of it. When we start asking for details, let me ask you a couple of questions. Where would an IG report? Would it be a creature of the legislature or a free-floating body or what?
No, they can't report, right? If they're going to report to the legislature, then they're going to maybe have the speaker or the Senate president leaning on them to say, no, you're not going to investigate this. Same thing with the executive branch. They don't answer to the executive branch either. They would be independent, truly independent, to investigate any area of government.
Okay, and how about the judiciary? That's one of my great, what if we're looking for waste, fraud, and inefficiency? Will the judiciary say, get out of here because we're a co-equal branch of government?
Well, what would they investigate in the judiciary?
Well, we've had cases where there've been problems in the judiciary with record keeping and
sure, I would say like record keeping.
So would that Inspector General would have the authority to go into any branch of government, any agency?
They would be independent.
Okay, yeah. So would they have subpoena power?
Yes.
Who would be qualified to be an Inspector General? And the reason I ask you that question is we expect that the Attorney General is a lawyer. We would hope that someone running the Department of Health is a medical professional, hopefully an MD. Yet we have a general office, the general treasurer. You don't need any financial background, which the current incumbent does not. He does not, he relies on his staff. My question to you is, what are the qualifications for an Inspector General in your mind?
I think that they should have a background in law, simply because they'll be wielding prosecuting powers if they do find something, that needs to be addressed. But I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a lawyer. I think that people will be more inclined to elect someone who has a law background. But as far as the example that you gave, Treasurer Diosa, he has a great staff, I'm sure, and he leans on them for their expertise. And sometimes, when you're in the legislature, you're relying on the expertise of other individuals. I'm not an expert in all fields and all matters, right? But I take the information that comes before me and come to a conclusion based on that information. Just knowing that someone is there, that you could be caught, is a deterrent. And I think that's one that's necessary. I do. And the Massachusetts Inspector General came to testify in committee in Rhode Island. He said, I think one year they saved the taxpayers $25 million, and the investment for Inspector General is the fraction is so small in comparison. I think we were looking at $1.5 million to staff an office for him.
We talked about school choice. Her. Yeah, her, exactly.
Yeah.
You have been close to the Zambrano Hospital facility, and that was originally the State Tuberculosis Sanatorium. It occupies a large campus on Wallam Lake in Burrville. And the plan actually, I have some familiarity with Zambrano. The plan was to phase it out and move the patients elsewhere. And back when that was being parts of it were already shut down and being mothballed. At that time, one of the members of administration told me that it was being kept open for people with severe disabilities who, I'm going to use a phrase, who knew a guy. That was a place that politically connected people would send, members of their family who needed a lot of help. Now that I'm going back a few years, but you got $100 million to do some renovation up there, and
Yeah.
what is the status of that now? How many patients do they have? Do you know offhand, or what's the status?
Yeah, the census changes because that hospital is not. It's not a hospital where you go and that's it. You die there.
No, it's a residential hospital.
It's a residential hospital, but it's one in which you require the highest level of care possible.
Yep.
But the goal is to rehabilitate the patient so that they can step down. So this is not a hospital in which, it's going to be your home forever. Although for some patients, it's going to be.
Yep.
And just so the background for me for Zambrano, I will say, I am not politically connected, but my uncle John, when he came to this country, he had lots of brothers and sisters, and we call him Uncle Eddie. He was born here in the United States, but he was born disabled, and he didn't have use of his arms and legs, and was wheelchair bound for his entire life. When his parents became too ill, too elderly to care for him, there was no facility that could care for Uncle Eddie. So Uncle Eddie went to live at Zambrano Hospital. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a kid, when it was my uncle's turn to go visit his brother, he would take me and my mom, sometimes my brother or whatever, and we would go to Zambrano first we would drive from East Providence to Warren, pick up his parents, from Warren to Burrillville to spend the afternoon with Uncle Eddie. So I saw at a very young age the profound needs that those patients have. And when people think hospital, they think Rhode Island Hospital, you break an arm, you go home. These are quadriplegic patients, ventilator patients, completely dependent on other people, multidisciplinary care. It's not like Rhode Island Hospital. But the goal is not to keep patients there. The goal is to rehabilitate them so that they can go and live in a nursing home or in a group setting, exactly, so that they're more autonomous. And that's always the goal. But there will be patients that insist on staying, and there is a law for that, a federal law, which you have to keep the patient. Yeah. But there's also the law that says you can't keep a patient in the most restrictive setting when there is a less restrictive setting. So, and I know this is not...
Your conflict of the law, right?
Right, but, and the thing too is, I know this is a little wonky, and I tell people it's not a sexy topic, like guns or abortion, but it's a necessary discussion that we have as a state, because what we were doing was we were shipping patients off to other states. And other states were charging Rhode Island to care for those patients. So it's actually costing us more to send these Rhode Islanders to another state, and then their families can't see them because some of them don't have the means to go and visit their family. And then we were also not in line with Medicare, with law. So we were, with federal law, so we were forfeiting millions and millions and millions of dollars. Wow. So we've made some changes, and I'm gonna say, it wasn't just me. And
you had to reach across the aisle.
I had to reach across the aisle. Senator DePalma held oversight hearings, and let me tell you, if it was not for oversight hearings and really just uncovering some of the things that were happening and the mismanagement, but also too, the nurses, they came right alongside me and Senator DePalma, patient rights groups. But I'll leave it at that, so we can talk about other things. But
no, I want to congratulate you for your concern. This is an area that I think a lot of people shy away from, but as I said, I have some familiarity, so I have been there a number of times. I'm going back several years, but so I know the care that was given and the type of patients that they were working with. We have about 5 minutes, and I want to talk a little bit about Second Amendment. Every year, I guess for the last several years, anti-gun groups and their allies in the legislature have succeeded, I call it, in encroaching on the Second Amendment and on Section 21 of Article 1 of the Rhode Island Constitution, which says that citizens have a right to own and carry firearms.
Period. End of sentence.
Nothing about a militia in ours. But anyway, and we can do another show on what militia means. But anyway, I find that every year there's some bills, and it seems like the leadership is letting little bills go through to keep away the big boogeyman, which is what their highest priority is called an assault weapon ban, which is in a lot of litigation all over, including at the U.S. Supreme Court level. But anyway, do you have a position on the assault weapon ban, or where does it stand in the Senate, do you think? I'm really interested, because this is like the holy grail for the Moms Demand Action and the Rhode Island Coalition.
Yeah. Gosh, it's an issue that's actually very important to me. Being a daughter of immigrants, I think that our founding is so unique. It's what makes us special, and it's what's made America the nation that it is. And the Second Amendment is number 2 on the list of rights for a reason, because it's that important. And so I look at it as an assault on the Constitution, but also individual rights. And I would say that the assault weapons ban I'm not in favor of, because I'll be in committee and we'll have people come before me and the entire committee and say, I'm for an assault weapons ban, and I will ask them, can you describe to me what an assault weapon is? No, I can't. Oh, okay. But you're here to testify in favor of a piece of legislation that you don't understand, what you're advocating for. So, and I find that to be true of also the legislators that introduce the legislation, that they don't understand what they're introducing. Because when we point out, and I say we because Senator Rogers of Foster, he's really the sportsman and he knows a lot more about firearms than I do. But it really comes down to most of the firearms that we have today would be outlawed, semi-automatics. So we're talking about like a handgun. So Rhode Islanders would be able to have maybe a revolver, a pump action shotgun.
Single shot, that works.
Right, exactly, single shot. But they would have to get rid of their 9mm semi-automatic, because
or semi-automatic shotgun.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so I don't think they understand what they're doing. I want to believe always that the intent behind a piece of legislation is coming from a good place, but just because the intent is good does not mean that the bill is actually good.
Yeah. I think the question is, how will this legislation prevent violent crime? And that's a key question. We've got a little bit of time left, but I want to touch on the Washington Bridge fiasco. It seems to me like the McKee administration is really dodging the issue. Director of Transportation Peter Alviti seems to be shielded from criticism of what's going on, but what do you think is going to happen? I mean, we're suing the bridge companies that we're asking to come in and give us a bid to do the job, and it's...
Yeah. I think the people that they find that are responsible are going to be dead, right? And so there's not going to be anything they can do about it. And I as much as I think that leadership needs to take responsibility for it, I also think that the previous administration has a lot of blame on their shoulders for it. It's a huge black eye for Rhode Island. I'm concerned about driving over any bridge at this point, because I'm not sure that it's really up to standard. And this bridge has surpassed its life expectancy. We should have replaced that bridge years ago. And so it's not just this administration, it was the previous one, and probably the one before that, I'm not sure. But they haven't really been forthcoming with information. And hopefully with the piece of legislation that we passed in the Senate, we should be getting monthly reports.
Do you think that Senator DePalma, he's going to chair oversight again? Music
to my ears.
Do you think he's going? But do you think oversight on the Senate side is going to hold some hearings?
With Senator DePalma at the helm, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you that it was non-existent, that committee oversight. When Senator DePalma took over, we had committees practically every week. It was a serious committee. And with him back at the helm, I think that the administration is going to be shaking in their boots, because he's going to have them in that committee answering for their mistakes.
We've got maybe 20 seconds left. Tell people why they should vote for you.
Because I am a regular person and I understand voters. I understand where they're at. When politicians say, oh, things aren't really that bad, I say, you must be so far removed from the regular person to say that things aren't that bad. Things are bad. And so when I'm at the State House, I understand those struggles, I live those struggles, and I will be mindful not to make the burden heavier. I want to lift the burden off Rhode Islanders. And I want to make the state a great place for my kids and their kids.
I want to thank the minority leader in the Senate, Jessica De La Cruz, for coming on. Thank you, audience, for watching State of the State.